Commander Darius Johnson felt the weight of history as he walked through the crystal halls of the dying Kethmoran homeworld. The air itself seemed to hum with ancient power, but that power was fading fast. Massive crystal formations that once blazed with brilliant light now flickered like dying candles in the wind. The Kethmoran were unlike any species in the galaxy. Their bodies were made of living crystal that could grow and reshape itself, and they communicated through musical tones that sounded like wind chimes dancing in a storm. But now, as Darius looked around the great chamber, he could see that their time was running out. Elder Velnumbers stood at the center of the room, his crystal body towering nearly 12 feet high. Once, he would have glowed like a star, but now his light was dim and weak. Around the chamber, hundreds of other Kethmoran elders sat in silence, their own lights fading as their ancient sun slowly died in the sky above. Captain Jasmine Williams stood beside Darius, her dark eyes taking in every detail of the historic moment. She had served under Darius for 5 years, and she had never seen him look so serious. Behind them, a small group of human diplomats waited quietly, unsure of what was about to happen. But the humans were not alone in the chamber. Representatives from dozens of alien species had come to witness this meeting. The galaxy was watching, and most of them were not friendly to humanity. The Hegemony Ambassador, a tall insect-like creature called Korthvel, stood with his arms crossed. His kind ruled over half the galaxy with an iron fist, and they had never liked humans much. To them, humans were just young upstarts who had only been in space for a few hundred years. Near the back of the chamber, the snake-like Velkari Ambassador swayed slowly, his golden eyes fixed on the humans with obvious amusement. The Velkari were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and they treated younger races like annoying children. Elder Velnumbers raised one of his crystal arms, and the chamber fell silent. When he spoke, his voice rang out like the sound of beautiful music mixed with the crash of breaking glass. Commander Johnson, the elder began, his words echoing off the crystal walls. I have called you here to reveal a secret that my people have kept for many thousands of your years. Darius nodded respectfully. We are honored to listen, Elder. The old crystal being's light flickered brighter for a moment, as if he was gathering his strength. Long ago, when your species was still young and had not yet learned to reach for the stars, we watched your world from afar. We saw something terrible heading toward your planet. Jasmine felt her heart skip a beat. She had studied human history extensively, but she had never heard anything like this. A massive asteroid, Velnumbers continued, larger than your mountains, was racing through space toward Earth. If it had struck your world, it would have destroyed all life. Your species would have died before it ever had the chance to grow and learn. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the alien ambassadors had stopped their quiet conversations to listen. My people had a choice, the elder said, his voice growing softer. We could watch your species die, or we could act. We chose to act. Using our most powerful ships, we changed the path of the great rock. We sent it harmlessly into your sun, where it burned up and disappeared. Darius felt his breath catch in his throat. You saved our entire species. Yes, Velnumbers replied simply. But we did it in secret. We never told you what we had done. We asked for nothing in return. We simply believed that life should be protected, wherever it might grow. Captain Williams looked around the chamber and saw the shocked faces of the alien delegates. This was news to them too. For thousands of years, the Kethmoran had kept this secret to themselves. But now, the elder continued, his light growing even dimmer, we face our own extinction. Our sun is dying, and we cannot stop it. Soon, our world will become cold and dark, and all of our people will die. The weight of those words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. 4 to 7 billion Kethmoran lived on this world and the other planets in their system. When their sun died, they would all die with it. We have searched for new worlds, Velnumbers said, but we are not a traveling people. We need special conditions to survive, and the worlds we need are far away. 200 light-years from here, there are 3 planets that could support our kind. But moving our entire civilization such a distance. The elder's voice trailed off. The Hegemony Ambassador stepped forward, clicking his mandibles together in what passed for laughter among his kind. Elder, surely you know that such a task is impossible. Moving 4 to 7 billion beings across 200 light-years would require resources that no single species possesses. Even the combined might of the Galactic Council could not accomplish such a feat. Other alien delegates nodded in agreement. The logistics alone would be staggering. It would require thousands of massive ships, supplies for a journey that could take years, and the construction of entirely new worlds for the Kethmoran to live on. Elder Velnumbers looked directly at Darius, his ancient eyes filled with sadness but also with dignity. "Commander Johnson, I tell you this story not to ask for your help. The debt we created by saving your species need not be paid. We acted out of love for life itself, not for reward. We simply wanted you to know what we did, before we fade into history." The chamber was so quiet that Darius could hear his own heartbeat. Every eye in the room was on him, waiting to see what the human commander would say. The alien ambassadors were barely hiding their amusement, sure that even if the humans wanted to help, they lacked the power to do anything meaningful. Darius Johnson had been a soldier for most of his adult life. He had fought in battles across the galaxy, led missions to distant worlds, and faced impossible odds more times than he could count. But he had never felt the weight of responsibility quite like this. He thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who lived there and throughout human space. None of them knew that they owed their very existence to these dying crystal beings. Without the Kethmoran's secret intervention so long ago, humanity would never have existed. Taking a deep breath, Darius stepped forward until he stood directly in front of the massive elder. His voice, when he spoke, was clear and strong, carrying to every corner of the crystal chamber. "Elder Velnumbers, with the greatest respect, you are wrong about one thing. This debt absolutely will be paid." A wave of shocked murmurs ran through the gathered aliens. The hegemony ambassador's mandibles clicked rapidly in what sounded almost like panic. "Humans always honor their debts," Darius continued, his dark eyes meeting the elder's ancient gaze. "And we never forget our friends." The news hit the galactic communication networks faster than a hyperspace jump. Within hours, every major world in the galaxy had heard about humanity's impossible promise. In government buildings, military headquarters, and alien council chambers across countless star systems, the same conversations were happening over and over again. On the massive capital world of the hegemony, Supreme Leader Korth sat in his towering throne room, reading reports that made him laugh out loud. His insect-like body shook with amusement as he shared the news with his closest advisors. "Can you believe this foolishness?" Korth clicked his mandibles together rapidly. 4 to 7 billion crystal beings, moved across 200 light-years of empty space. Even with our entire military fleet and unlimited resources, such a task would take us decades and bankrupt half our empire. His chief military advisor, General Hexnor, nodded in agreement. "My lord, our analysts estimate it would require at least 10,000 massive transport ships, plus escort vessels, supply chains, and the construction of entirely new worlds. The humans have maybe a few hundred ships total in their entire space navy." "Exactly," Korth replied, his golden eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "These arrogant mammals have finally made a promise they cannot keep. When they fail, and they will fail spectacularly, their influence in galactic politics will be finished forever." But while the hegemony leadership celebrated what they saw as humanity's coming embarrassment, something very different was happening in the hidden corners of human space. Admiral Darius Thompson had been expecting this day for a long time. Deep in the classified military complex on New Atlas, a world that didn't appear on any official star charts, he was already putting plans into motion that had been years in the making. New Atlas looked like a simple research station from the outside, but beneath its surface lay some of humanity's most advanced technology. In the underground laboratories, Dr. Keisha Thompson led a team of scientists who had been working on terraforming projects that the rest of the galaxy thought were impossible. "Keisha, how long do we need to prepare the atmospheric processes?" Darius asked his wife as they walked through the massive underground facility. "The Mark 7 units have been ready for months," she replied, pulling up holographic displays that showed planet-sized machines capable of transforming dead worlds into garden paradises. "We can have breathable atmospheres on 3 worlds within 6 months, and full ecosystems within a year." Dr. Malik Davis, Keisha's research partner, joined the conversation with excitement in his voice. "Admiral, the Crystal Matrix habitation systems are also ready for deployment. We've been studying Kethmoran biology for 15 years, preparing for exactly this kind of situation." Darius nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy thought humans were newcomers who had stumbled into space by accident. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for major galactic challenges for decades. Across human space, similar conversations were happening in locations that officially didn't exist. Captain DeAndre Wilson stood in what appeared to be a simple asteroid mining station called Omega 7, but appearances could be deceiving. "Commander Brown, initiate Protocol 7, DeAndre ordered his chief engineer. Commander Alicia Brown's fingers danced across control panels that most people would never see. "Yes, sir. Activating hidden manufacturing network now." Suddenly, holographic displays filled the command center, showing dozens of locations throughout human territory. What had appeared to be simple asteroids began to unfold like massive metal flowers, revealing shipyards that had been hidden in plain sight for years. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Torres, a young officer who was seeing the hidden network for the first time. "How long have these facilities been operational?" "Some for 20 years, some for 50, Alicia replied calmly. "We've been building this network since shortly after first contact with alien species. Every mining operation and research station has been part of a larger plan." The displays showed production facilities that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Automated factories that could build entire starships in weeks rather than years. Resource processing plants that could turn raw asteroids into refined materials faster than most species could mine them. "Sir," Alicia continued, "we're showing production capacity for over 2,000 heavy transport vessels, plus escort ships and support craft. The hidden yards in the Centauri system alone can produce a fleet larger than most species' entire navies." Meanwhile, in the Great Council chambers of the Galactic Council, emergency sessions were being called to discuss humanity's shocking promise. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to debate whether humans had lost their minds. The ancient Velkari ambassador, a snake-like being called SSS Thok, rose to address the assembly. His species had been traveling the stars for over 50,000 years, and they considered themselves experts on what was possible and what was not. "Fellow delegates," Thok hissed, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "We have all heard the humans' ridiculous promise. As the eldest species here, I feel it is my duty to explain why this task cannot be accomplished." The chamber fell silent as the ancient alien continued. "Moving 4 to 7 billion beings across such distances would require technological capabilities that simply do not exist. It would need perfect coordination across hundreds of worlds, supply chains that span multiple star systems, and manufacturing capacity that no single species possesses." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The hegemony representative stood and added his own thoughts. "The Velkari delegate speaks truth," he declared. "Even our mighty empire, with resources spanning 1,000 worlds, could not accomplish such a feat. These humans are either delusional or simply engaging in political theater to gain sympathy from the Keth Moran." The Christine delegate, whose species were master engineers, shook his geometric head sadly. "I have run the calculations myself. Such an operation would require at least 50 years of preparation and resources equivalent to the gross domestic product of 100 major worlds. It is simply impossible." But as the alien delegates debated humanity's foolishness, they had no idea what was really happening throughout human space. Secret communication networks that had been dormant for years suddenly came alive with encrypted messages. Military officers who had been waiting for decades finally received the orders they had been training for. On colony worlds throughout human territory, civilians began to notice unusual activity. Cargo ships that usually carried simple trade goods were suddenly loading mysterious equipment. Research stations that had been quiet for years were buzzing with activity day and night. Dr. Patricia Hayes, working at what appeared to be a simple agricultural research facility, received a coded message that made her smile. She had been developing advanced hydroponic systems that could feed millions of beings, and now she finally knew why. Engineer Raymond Clark, stationed at a weather monitoring station near the Galactic Rim, powered up massive sensor arrays that had been disguised as simple communication equipment. His job was to scout suitable worlds for Keth Moran colonization, and he had been preparing for years. Throughout the galaxy, alien intelligence agencies tried to understand what humans were really planning. Their spies reported unusual activity but couldn't make sense of it. Ships moving in patterns that seemed random. Resources being redirected for unknown purposes. Communication traffic that was heavily encrypted and impossible to decode. "Sir," reported the hegemony's chief intelligence officer, "our agents report increased human activity across all their territories, but we cannot determine their actual capabilities or intentions." Supreme Leader Korth dismissed the report with a wave of his claw. "It doesn't matter what they are planning. The task is impossible, and they will fail. When they do, we will be here to remind the galaxy exactly why the hegemony leads and others follow." But deep in human space, Admiral Thompson stood before a massive holographic display showing the true scope of humanity's hidden capabilities. Shipyards that could produce fleets. Terraforming equipment that could reshape worlds. Supply networks that spanned hundreds of systems. "Keisha," he said to his wife, "the galaxy thinks we're naive newcomers who stumbled into space by accident. They're about to learn just how wrong they've been." The impossible promise had been made, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what human determination really meant. 3 months had passed since Commander Darius Johnson made his promise to the dying Kethmoran, and the galaxy was about to witness something that would change everything they thought they knew about humanity. Captain Jerome Washington stood on the bridge of the massive construction ship Unity, watching as his crew prepared for what would become the most important reveal in galactic history. The Unity was enormous, stretching over 5 miles from bow to stern, but it was just one of 50 identical vessels that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. "Sir, we're receiving communication requests from over 30 different species," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Hayes. "Everyone wants to know where these ships came from." Jerome smiled as he looked out at the fleet of construction vessels floating in formation around them. Each ship was a marvel of engineering that the galaxy had never seen before. They weren't just ships, they were floating cities capable of building entire fleets while traveling through space. Lieutenant Colonel Tamara Green, his operations chief, approached with a data pad in her hands. "Captain, the hegemony is demanding immediate inspection of our facilities. They're claiming we've violated several interstellar treaties by hiding military assets." Jerome's smile grew wider. "Approved. Send them coordinates for Docking Bay 7. It's time the galaxy learned what human industry really looks like." Tamara nodded and walked away, but not before Jerome caught the excited gleam in her eyes. She had been waiting for this moment for 15 years, ever since she first started working on the secret construction projects that were now finally seeing daylight. The Unity was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. From the outside, it looked impressive but not impossible. However, once someone stepped inside, they would discover that the entire ship was essentially one massive factory. Automated production lines ran through every deck, capable of building everything from small fighter craft to enormous transport vessels. Dr. Isaiah Roberts was having the time of his life aboard the research vessel Progress, which was stationed near a dead planet called Kepler 442c. The planet had no atmosphere, no water, and no life of any kind. But Isaiah was about to change all of that. "Dr. Mitchell, are the atmospheric processes ready for deployment?" he asked his colleague, Dr. Zara Mitchell, who was monitoring massive machines that had been lowered to the planet's surface. "All systems green, Isaiah," Zara replied, her voice filled with excitement. "The Mark 7 processes are online and beginning atmospheric conversion. We should have breathable air within 6 weeks." Isaiah watched through the ship's massive viewing windows as the planet below began to change before his eyes. Enormous machines, each the size of a small city, were pumping gases into the thin atmosphere while simultaneously breaking down rock to create water vapor. It was a process that most species believed would take centuries, but human technology was making it happen in weeks. "You know what the best part is?" Zara said, joining Isaiah at the viewing window. "The hegemony's top scientists published a paper just last year claiming that rapid terraforming was theoretically impossible." They both laughed as they watched their impossible machines doing impossible work on the planet below. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Inspector Vextal of the hegemony was about to have the shock of his life. He had boarded what he thought was a simple human cargo vessel, expecting to find evidence that humans were bluffing about their capabilities. Instead, he found himself walking through corridors that stretched for miles in every direction. "This is impossible," he whispered to his assistant as they moved deeper into the ship. "This vessel is larger inside than our biggest battle cruisers." The assistant, a young hegemony officer named Kexnor, was frantically taking notes on everything they saw. "Sir, I'm counting at least 40 separate production lines, each one capable of building complete starships. And these are just the facilities they're showing us." They stopped in front of a massive viewing window that looked down into a construction bay where a transport ship was being built from scratch. Automated systems were assembling the vessel with precision and speed that made hegemony manufacturing look like primitive craftsmanship. "How long would it take to build that ship?" Vextal asked the human tour guide, a cheerful engineer named Captain Williams. "Oh, that one? About 18 hours from start to finish," Williams replied casually. "We can build 12 ships simultaneously in each bay, and this vessel has 24 bays." Vextal felt his legs go weak. In 18 hours, this single human ship could produce what it would take a hegemony shipyard 6 months to complete. "Captain Williams," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "how many ships like this do humans possess?" Williams smiled innocently. "Ships like the Unity? Oh, we have 50 of them operational right now. But we also have the smaller production vessels, the mobile refineries, the resource extractors, and the planetary construction platforms. All told, I'd say we're running about 300 major industrial vessels." That night, Vextal's report to Hegemony Command was filled with barely controlled panic. "Supreme Leader, the humans have not been hiding their capabilities, they have been hiding an entire shadow civilization. Every merchant vessel we've observed was actually a disguised factory. Every research station was a manufacturing facility. Every trade mission was establishing supply networks we never detected. Supreme Leader Korth read the report 3 times before he could believe it. How is this possible? Our intelligence networks monitor everything that moves through space. Sir, Vextal continued in his report, human technology appears to be decades ahead of our own in manufacturing, automation, and resource processing. They have been building this industrial network for at least 50 years while maintaining the illusion that they were a young, developing species. Across the galaxy, similar reports were pouring in from every major intelligence agency. The Velkari, who prided themselves on knowing everything that happened in their sector of space, discovered that human exploration vessels had been secretly establishing supply depots and construction facilities for decades. The Christine Collective, master engineers who thought they understood manufacturing better than anyone, received reports about human production capabilities that made their own industrial complexes look like small workshops. Admiral Darius Thompson stood in the command center of New Atlas, watching holographic displays that showed the true scope of human operations across the galaxy. Hundreds of facilities that had been hidden for decades were now operating at full capacity. For 50 years, he said to his assembled fleet commanders via secure quantum communication, we've played the role of junior partners in galactic affairs. We've let older species treat us like naive newcomers who stumbled into space by accident. The holographic displays showed massive ships under construction, planets being terraformed at impossible speeds, and supply networks that spanned hundreds of star systems. Today, we reveal what humanity has really been building, Thompson continued. We show the galaxy that when humans make a promise, we have both the will and the means to keep it. Dr. Keisha Thompson, working from her laboratory complex, had just received confirmation that her atmospheric processes were working perfectly on 12 different worlds. Each planet was being transformed from a lifeless rock into a world capable of supporting the unique needs of crystalline life forms. Darius, she said to her husband over their private communication channel, the Kethmoran atmospheric requirements are more complex than we initially thought, but our systems are adapting perfectly. We'll have suitable worlds ready ahead of schedule. The revelation was spreading through the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had dismissed humanity as insignificant were suddenly scrambling to understand how they had been so completely fooled. Military analysts were frantically recalculating the balance of power in the galaxy, while politicians were wondering what other surprises humanity might be hiding. In the Great Council chambers, emergency sessions were being called daily as species after species reported their shock at humanity's true capabilities. The Velkari delegate who had mocked humanity's promise just months earlier was now calling for immediate diplomatic meetings with human leadership. The impossible was becoming reality, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that they had vastly underestimated the newest members of their interstellar community. The day of the Great Migration dawned like no other in galactic history. Across dozens of star systems, the largest rescue operation ever attempted was about to begin, and the entire galaxy was watching to see if humanity could actually pull off the impossible. Admiral Nina Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship Defiance, looking out at a sight that took her breath away. Hundreds of massive ships stretched out in perfect formation as far as the eye could see. These weren't just any ships, they were the most advanced vessels humanity had ever built, each one designed specifically for this mission. Admiral Carter, all escort squadrons are in position, reported her tactical officer, Commander Brooks. We have 17 battle groups providing protection across the entire migration route. Nina nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She was commanding the largest military fleet in human history, but this wasn't a mission of conquest or war. This was a mission of honor, to repay a debt that was thousands of years old. 200 light-years away, Admiral Tony Jackson was making final preparations aboard his command ship Liberation. The Liberation was enormous, stretching nearly 8 miles from end to end, and it was just one of 60 massive arc ships that would carry the Kethmoran to their new homes. Admiral Jackson, the crystalline habitat systems are showing all green, reported Dr. Chen, his chief science officer. Each arc can safely transport 12 million Kethmoran in perfect comfort during the journey. Tony walked through the viewing galleries where he could see the specially designed living spaces for their crystal passengers. The habitats were works of art as much as they were technology, vast chambers filled with the exact light frequencies and mineral compositions that the Kethmoran needed to survive. Sir, Dr. Chen continued, I have to say, When we first started designing these systems 15 years ago, I never imagined we'd actually get to use them. Tony smiled. That's the thing about being human, Doctor. We plan for everything, even the impossible. The communication systems aboard both flagships suddenly came alive with activity. Nina's voice rang out across space, reaching every ship in the massive fleet simultaneously. All migration fleets, this is Admiral Carter. Report your status. What happened next would have been impossible according to every alien scientist in the galaxy. Hundreds of ships, spread across dozens of star systems, all responded at exactly the same moment. Their voices created a chorus that spanned interstellar distances with no delay whatsoever. Fleet Alpha ready for departure. Fleet Beta all systems green. Fleet Gamma standing by for orders. The responses continued, each fleet commander reporting perfect readiness from distances that should have made instant communication impossible. But humanity's secret faster-than-light communication network was working flawlessly, allowing real-time coordination across the entire galaxy. In the Hegemony Intelligence Center, analysts were frantically trying to understand what they were witnessing. "This is impossible," muttered Chief Analyst Vexmore as he watched the human fleet coordinates with precision that defied everything they knew about space communication. "Sir," his assistant reported, "they're coordinating hundreds of vessels across interstellar distances with zero communication delay. Our best quantum entanglement systems have a 30-second lag at these ranges." Captain Jasmine Williams, now commanding the Ark ship New Dawn, felt a surge of pride as she watched her crew make final preparations. She had come a long way from her days as Darius Johnson's second-in-command, and now she was responsible for safely transporting 15 million Keth Moran to their new home. "Captain Williams," her navigation officer reported, "we're receiving the final passenger manifest. Elder Velnumbers has requested to speak with you personally." Jasmine made her way to the crystalline habitat section, where the ancient Keth Moran Elder was waiting. His crystal body was still dim from his people's dying sun, but there was hope in his musical voice. "Captain Williams," Velnumbers chimed, "my people have lived for thousands of years, but we have never seen anything like what your species has accomplished. How is such coordination possible?" Jasmine smiled gently. "Elder, humans have been preparing for this day for a very long time. We knew that someday, someone would need our help, and we wanted to be ready." The migration began smoothly, with each phase executed with military precision. But the galaxy's criminal elements had other ideas. The notorious Crimson Fleet, a confederation of pirates who had terrorized trade routes for decades, saw the migration as the perfect opportunity for the biggest heist in galactic history. Pirate Lord Kexvar commanded a fleet of nearly 200 ships, each one bristling with weapons stolen from various military forces. He had built his reputation on successful raids against supposedly well-defended convoys, and he saw no reason why this would be any different. "Brothers," he broadcast to his fleet, "today we take the greatest prize in galactic history. These human fools are traveling with slow cargo ships full of precious crystalline beings. We'll be rich beyond imagination." But Kexvar had made a critical error in judgment. He assumed that human escort ships were like the typical patrol vessels used by other species, lightly armed and designed more for show than actual fighting. Colonel Malik Davis commanded the escort squadron that first encountered the pirate fleet. His ships looked peaceful enough from the outside, but appearances were deceiving. "Sir, we have 200 hostile contacts approaching from Sector 7, reported his tactical officer. "Understood," Davis replied calmly. "Signal all ships, weapons free, engage at will." What happened next shocked the pirates and changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about human military capabilities. The human escort ships, which had seemed small and insignificant compared to the massive Ark ships, suddenly revealed weapons systems that rivaled the finest battle cruisers in the galaxy. Energy beams that could slice through heavy armor like paper. Missile systems that could track targets across impossible distances. Defense shields that seemed to absorb and redirect enemy fire rather than just blocking it. "This is impossible." Kexvar screamed as he watched his supposedly superior ships being systematically destroyed by what he had thought were simple cargo escorts. How are human ships this powerful? Within minutes, the confident pirate assault had turned into a panicked retreat. Ships that had ruled space lanes through fear and violence were fleeing like frightened children from human vessels that had never even been tested in real combat before. "Human vessels," Kexvar transmitted as his damaged flagship prepared to jump to hyperspace, "your capabilities are most unexpected." Colonel Davis allowed himself a small smile as he watched the pirate fleet disappear into hyperspace. "Unexpected indeed. All ships, resume escort positions." Let's get our passengers home safely. Back aboard the New Dawn, Captain Williams had watched the entire battle through her tactical displays. The Kethmoran passengers had been amazed by the efficiency and power of their human protectors. "Your species continues to surprise us," Elder Velnumber said, his crystal body flickering with what might have been amusement. "You build ships that appear peaceful but fight like legendary warriors." "Elder," Jasmine replied, "humans learned long ago that the best way to avoid a fight is to be so prepared for one that nobody wants to challenge you." The migration continued without further incident, each phase of the massive operation flowing smoothly into the next. Ships that had been traveling for weeks arrived at their destinations with perfect timing. Supply convoys appeared exactly when and where they were needed. Construction crews were already building the infrastructure that the Kethmoran would need on their new worlds. Across the galaxy, military analysts were scrambling to understand what they had witnessed. The human migration fleet had demonstrated capabilities in logistics, communication, and military power that exceeded anything they had thought possible for such a young species. "Sir," reported a hegemony military advisor to Supreme Leader Korth, "we need to completely revise our assessment of human capabilities. They're not the junior partners we thought they were, they're potentially the most advanced civilization in the galaxy." The impossible promise was becoming reality, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity was far more than they had ever imagined. 6 months had passed since the Great Migration began, and the galaxy was watching the final chapter of what many were calling the most impressive feat in interstellar history. The last Kethmoran transport had safely landed on their new homeworld, which they had named Haven in honor of the sanctuary humanity had provided them. Haven was a beautiful world, with 3 purple suns that provided exactly the right light frequencies for crystalline life. The planet's surface sparkled like a massive jewel as billions of Kethmoran settled into their new crystal cities, built with technology that combined human engineering with ancient Kethmoran design. Elder Velnumber stood in his new council chamber, his crystal body glowing brighter than it had in decades. Through the transparent walls, he could see human construction crews putting the finishing touches on the last of the crystal spires that would house his people for generations to come. "Captain Williams," he said to Jasmine, who had stayed to oversee the final settlement phase, "in all our thousands of years of existence, we have never witnessed such dedication to honor. Your species has not just saved us, you have given us hope for the future." Jasmine smiled as she watched Kethmoran children playing in the crystal gardens outside. "Elder, this is what humans do. When we make a promise, especially to friends, we keep it no matter what it costs us." But while Haven celebrated its new beginning, the rest of the galaxy was dealing with a very different reality. Everything they thought they knew about galactic politics had just been turned upside down, and nowhere was this more obvious than in the throne chamber of the hegemony. Supreme Leader Korth sat in his massive chair, reading reports that made his exoskeleton itch with nervous energy. For centuries, the hegemony had been the dominant military power in the galaxy, but now he was forced to admit that humanity might actually be stronger than his ancient empire. "Commander Hexnor," he said to his military advisor, "explain to me again how we completely failed to detect human capabilities." The commander's mandibles clicked nervously as he consulted his datapad. "My lord, our intelligence analysis suggests that humans have been hiding their true abilities since their first contact with galactic civilization. Every human colony we thought was simple farming or mining operations was actually part of a massive industrial network." Korth's golden eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you telling me that for 50 years, these mammals have been making fools of us?" "It's worse than that, sir," Hexnor continued reluctantly. "Every human diplomatic mission, every trade vessel, every cultural exchange was gathering intelligence and establishing supply networks. They've been playing a game we didn't even know existed." Meanwhile, in the halls of the Galactic Council, President Maya Johnson was addressing the assembled representatives of hundreds of species through communication technology that made the Council's traditional systems look like primitive smoke signals. Maya was a seasoned diplomat who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. She knew that how humanity handled their newfound respect would determine the future of galactic politics for centuries to come. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice reaching across the galaxy with perfect clarity, "the debt to the Kethmoran people has been paid in full. This operation demonstrates that humanity honors its obligations and protects its friends. We trust that the galaxy will remember this lesson." The reaction was immediate and profound. Species that had treated humanity as junior partners for decades were suddenly scrambling to establish better relationships. The Velkari, who had mocked human promises just months earlier, were now requesting immediate diplomatic meetings. Ambassador SSS Thok, the ancient snake-like Valkyrie who had laughed at humanity's impossible promise, now found himself in the uncomfortable position of requesting human assistance with his own species' problems. "President Johnson," he said, his forked tongue flickering with embarrassment, "the Valkyrie Collective would be honored to discuss defensive alliance possibilities with your government." Similar conversations were happening throughout the galaxy. The proud Christine Collective, who considered themselves the galaxy's master engineers, were requesting access to human terraforming technology. The Binary Coalition wanted help with their own refugee crisis. Even the mysterious Shadow Consortium, who rarely spoke to anyone, were sending diplomatic envoys to Earth. Admiral Darius Thompson, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces, sat in his office on New Atlas reviewing a flood of requests that would have been unthinkable just a year earlier. His aide, Captain DeAndre Wilson, brought him another stack of diplomatic communications. "Sir, the Centauri Republic is requesting assistance with their refugee crisis," Wilson reported. "They're offering unprecedented access to their trade routes in exchange for human help." Thompson nodded as he reviewed the request. "What else do we have?" "The Binary Coalition wants help terraforming new worlds for their expanding population. The Andorian Empire is asking for protection from hegemony expansion. And sir, even the Void Collective has emerged from wherever they hide to request a meeting." Thompson leaned back in his chair, understanding the enormous responsibility that now rested on humanity's shoulders. For decades, they had carefully built their capabilities while maintaining the illusion that they were still learning how to be part of galactic society. Now that the truth was out, every species in the galaxy was looking to humanity for solutions to problems they couldn't solve themselves. "Wilson," he said thoughtfully, "make sure our response to each request is carefully considered. We have the power to help, but we need to be smart about how we use it." The transformation of galactic politics was happening faster than anyone had expected. The Galactic Council, which had traditionally been dominated by the hegemony and a few other ancient powers, now found itself waiting for humanity's position before making major decisions. Dr. Keisha Thompson was experiencing this change firsthand as she worked with alien scientists who had previously dismissed human research. Species that had once considered human technology primitive were now begging to learn about atmospheric processing, faster-than-light communication, and advanced manufacturing. "Dr. Thompson," said Dr. Velkex, a hegemony scientist who had once called human research interesting but impractical, "would it be possible for your people to share some insights into your terraforming processes?" Keisha smiled politely. "Dr. Velkex, I'd be happy to discuss collaboration opportunities. Of course, such advanced technology sharing would need to be part of broader diplomatic agreements between our governments." Throughout human space, the hidden installations that had made the Kethmoran rescue possible continued their quiet work. Manufacturing facilities disguised as mining operations kept producing advanced technology. Research stations that appeared to be studying stellar phenomena were actually developing even more impressive capabilities. The galaxy now understood that when humanity had appeared on the interstellar scene 50 years earlier, they hadn't been the naive newcomers everyone assumed. They had been playing the long game, carefully observing galactic politics while building capabilities that could challenge any existing power. Captain Jerome Washington, still commanding the construction ship Unity, received orders to assist with a Valkyrie colony ship that had suffered critical damage. As his massive vessel approached the stranded aliens, he couldn't help but remember how these same Valkyrie had mocked humanity's capabilities just months earlier. "Captain," his operations officer reported, "the Valkyrie are transmitting continuous thanks for our assistance. They're calling us honored allies and saviors of the innocent." Jerome chuckled. "Funny how perspectives change when you need help." Back on Haven, Elder Velnumbers stood in his crystal garden watching human ships preparing to depart. The massive vessels that had carried his people to safety were now heading back to human space, their mission complete. But he knew that something far more significant than a rescue operation had just occurred. "Captain Williams," he said as Jasmine prepared for her own departure, "your species has not just saved the Kethmoran. You have changed the entire galaxy. The old powers who ruled through fear and intimidation now understand that there is a new force in the universe, one that rules through honor and capability." Jasmine nodded as she looked out at the crystal spires that would house billions of grateful Kethmoran for generations to come. "Elder, humanity has always believed that with great power comes great responsibility. The galaxy is about to learn what that really means." As the human ships departed Haven and returned to their hidden bases throughout the galaxy, one thing was clear to every observer: the galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. The impossible promise had been kept, and in doing so, humanity had revealed that they were not just another species struggling to find their place among the stars. They were the new guardians of galactic civilization, ready to emerge whenever honor or friendship demanded action. The age of human influence in galactic affairs had truly begun.